Let's get started by creating a Next.js application. In order to do that, we have to meet specific system requirements as outlined on their installation page. As you can see, Next.js requires Node.js with a minimum version of 18.18. In order to confirm what version you have, head inside of your terminal and run the command node-version. If you get an error, or if you get a version lower than 18.18, it is time to upgrade or install. You can do that by clicking on Node.js link within the Next.js installation page, or simply Googling Node.js download. As you can see, the latest long-term support version is 22.20.0, and this is the easiest way to set up Node.js on your system. Once you've done that, go ahead and run this command again. I would highly recommend that you are on the same Node version as me. And while you're here, also double check that you have npm and npx. If you're using the same Node version as me, you will definitely have these installed as well once you install Node.js. Keep in mind that versions of npm and npx can be different depending on what operating system you are on. So it doesn't matter that they are exactly the same as mine. They can be different versions. What's important is the Node version and that you don't get errors for running any of these three commands. Once you have confirmed you have that, let's go ahead and install Next.js. As you can see, we have a command which we can use to bootstrap creating a Next.js application, but we are going to slightly modify it. As you can see, they are using the @latest tag, which is perfectly fine. But in my case, and more specifically in your case, I don't know when you are watching this tutorial. For that reason, I want to make this tutorial in a way that you can follow regardless of when you are watching this. So the exact latest version at the time of me making this tutorial is 15.5.4. So I would highly recommend that you write 15.5.4. And this way, you will be using the exact same stable version that I am using, and you won't have to tackle with any breaking changes that might have been added. So yes, don't worry if at the time that you are watching Next.js is on a higher version, right? The way I'm building this tutorial is so that it works for 15.5.4. If you want to upgrade later, I would recommend that you do that after you finish the tutorial. It will make it much more easier for you to follow along. After you've done that, let's go ahead and give this project a name. So I'm going to call this Nodebase, the name of our project. Let's go ahead and install this Create Next app, and let's select Yes for TypeScript. We can select any linter you prefer. It will not change the project whatsoever. For example, I'm going to choose Biome. For Tailwind CSS, make sure you select Yes. Make sure you select Yes for the source directory as well. In case this is your first time seeing this install wizard, you can use the arrow keys to choose between Yes or No. So make sure you select Yes. Same for the app router, same for TurboPack, and select No for customizing the import alias. And now let's just wait for this to install. Once the project is installed, you will see a success message like this. So then, go ahead and immediately change directory inside of your newly installed project, Nodebase. Now let's go ahead and do a simple ls just to confirm that we are in the correct repository. You should have a readme, a biome file, node modules, public, source, and some package config files. Perfect. Now that we have set that up inside of our terminal, let's also set it up inside of our IDE. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, but you can use any editor you prefer. So let's go ahead and open this project. I'm going to go ahead and select Nodebase and click Open. If you get a prompt like this, let me show you exactly how it looks like. You can select Yes. Now let's go ahead and just quickly review our code. So our file structure looks like the following. As I've already mentioned, by running the ls command, we have some config files. We have the node modules folder, public, and the source folder. What's important is that you have the same structure as I do, which is almost 100% bound to happen if you used the exact same version as me. So that's why I'm telling you to use the same version, so you don't have any surprises here. You should have the source folder, you should have the app folder, and inside you should have a favicon, globals, layout, and page. So let's go ahead and run this project now. In order to run our project, all we have to do is go inside of our terminal and do npm run dev. Since we selected TurboPack, we will have much faster developer builds, and you will see --TurboPack right here. And then you will see where to access your page on localhost 3000. So let's go ahead and go to localhost 3000, and once you refresh, you should see Next.js here. Depending on if your system is in light mode or dark mode, you obviously might see this as a white background. So let's go ahead and try and change something. I'm going to go inside of page.tsx within the app folder here, and I'm going to remove everything. And instead, I'm just going to write const page like this, return. Let's add a simple div, hello world, and export default page. And let's save this file. As you can see, I just have a plain hello world text. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see it right here. So what happened? Why did this work? How did I know which file to modify? What happened here is that I went inside of the app folder, which is basically the router of the Next.js application. And I selected page.tsx, which you can imagine as the root file of this project. Page is a reserved file name within Next.js. So if this was called something else, it would not work. It would not be recognized as a, well, page. The second important thing for you to know when working within Next.js is beside the reserved file name, which is page, you also have to do a default export. For example, if I forgot to do a default export and instead did this, you will see that I will encounter an error. The default export is not a React component in /page. So that's why I did export default. So make sure you do that as well whenever you are creating pages. Perfect. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and quickly test if Tailwind is working within our project. So I'm going to go ahead and give this div a class name, text red 500, and it immediately turns red. So now you've probably noticed that I have this cool little color indicator here. And not only that, when I hover over classes, I can see the exact underlying CSS, and I can even see the hex color and this specific value right here. So why do I have that? And it's actually super useful. If you're using Visual Studio Code, go ahead inside of your extensions here and search for Tailwind. Inside of here, you will find Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. If you're using Tailwind, please install this. It will make your life that much easier. So besides that, it also offers you autocomplete. For example, if I want to add font bold or extra bold, I can just do this. And there we go. Once I save, it turns bold. So besides that, it will also kind of hint you if you're using an invalid Tailwind class. If I accidentally add a typo here, when I hover over, nothing happens. But whenever I hover over a valid Tailwind class, I can see the underlying CSS. So using that little trick, you can always check if you made a typo or not for what you think is the Tailwind class. Perfect. So our Tailwind is actually working. The reason our Tailwind is working, I'm not sure if you even noticed that it's working. What I meant to say is previously, Tailwind required a config file, which we cannot find at the moment. That's because we are using Tailwind version 4, as you can see. So Tailwind version 4, if you're not familiar, is, well, an upgraded version of Tailwind, which simplified a ton of things, one of them being no more config file, which is absolutely amazing. You don't really have to worry about this. I'm just making sure that you are aware what Tailwind version you're using. But if you installed the app by using 15.5.4, you will have the exact version as I do. So yes, another thing to check is the package JSON. Just double check that you have the same dependencies as me. so you don't get any frustration and having trouble follow along. The biome part or slint part isn't really important. That's really for your own linting preferences. Perfect. So now that we have that, let me go back and see what I've outlined here. So far, we have set up the environment, we set up Next.js app, but we didn't set up ShadCN UI. So what is ShadCN UI? I like to say that ShadCN UI is a component library, but that's actually not true. ShadCN is much more than that. So as per their definition, ShadCN is a set of beautifully designed components that you can customize, extend, and most importantly, build on. Start here and then make it your own. That's exactly what ShadCN is. Let's go ahead and click Get Started, and let's select Next.js. In here, I'm going to go ahead and select NPM because that's the package manager that I am using. So before we run this again, instead of doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and do something else. So I'm going to go ahead and select latest -- version. This way, you will see the exact latest version at the time of me making this tutorial. So instead of running latest init, I will run 3.3.1. And I would highly recommend that you do the same so you don't have any surprises if some components were deprecated or drastically changed. Even though ShadCN really takes care of backwards compatibility. And there's a little bug in my command here. It is not ShadCN UI, it is just ShadCN. Make sure you don't do the same mistake. And make sure you're doing this inside of the Nodebase directory. So before I run this command, ls, make sure you see these things. And once you've convinced yourself that you're inside of here, go ahead and run npx shadcn 3.3.1 init. Let's go ahead and allow it to install the packages. And once it's done that, it will add a couple of changes, a couple of new files, folders inside of our project. So when it comes to which color you would like to use, it really doesn't matter. But if you want your project to look exactly the same as mine, select neutral. And the rest will be found automatically. You can see it recognized the Next.js, it found version 4 Tailwind config, it found the import alias. Basically, no problems at all setting up ShadCN UI. Perfect. So what I would recommend you do is just restart your server here, just in case, because this was a lot of hot reload because of all the files that have been added here. So you can see now, instead of my source control here, I have a lot of new files. So I have components.json. I have a bunch of new files in my package.json. I have changes in my globals.css. I have changes in my page. Okay, that's us, we did this. And I have a new utils file. So let's go ahead and just quickly go over these, and I will try to explain what they are. So starting from the obvious new folder lib, and inside we have utils.cs. So this will probably be the most used function in this project, and I can immediately show you how it's used. So head inside of app page.tsx. And instead of writing class names like this, imagine you had something dynamic. For example, const something and set it to true. And go ahead and open curly brackets around here. And then add cn from libutils. So that exact function that I just showed you, right? And this is our import alias. So this is so you don't have to do this. It doesn't make too much sense now because we are very shallow, but imagine you are in a deeply nested folder. You would keep having to doing this and this and this until eventually you found libutils, or you can just use the import alias, which kind of teleports you to the root of the project. So make sure you added this and make sure you have wrapped your class name like this. And looking at it, nothing really changes. Let me just refresh here. So nothing really changes. And yes, if you were in dark mode and had a black background, after adding ShadCN UI, you will now have a white background. So yes, that's perfectly fine. So nothing really changed regarding the class name for our hello world text, right? Even though I just wrapped it in this CN library. Well, yes, because by default, it can do just that. Just normally parse your Tailwind class. But imagine you had a bunch